All right, so good morning, everyone. It's a leap day today. Welcome to the McGill Dementia Education Program's Caring Conversations. This is a free community outreach initiative to provide virtual support to care partners of people living with dementia. So the McGill Dementia Education Program offers a comprehensive range of free resources to educate and support people living with dementia, family and informal caregivers, healthcare professionals, medical students, and the public at large. An important resource is Dementia, Your Companion Guide, which is available online to download for free in 12 languages. Printed copies can also be obtained at Amazon. And you can also find answers to many of your questions in the extensive library of McGill Care's webcasts and podcasts. Caring Conversations is an initiative of the McGill Dementia Education Program and is supported by the Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation. And now let's meet our moderators. Lucy Bauerleck received her Master of Social Work from the McGill University School of Social Work. She has developed evidence-based training for seniors and caregivers, and she has lectured in the field of social gerontology and presented at major conferences. Her research studies have been published in numerous journals. Ms. Bauerleck received the Queen's Jubilee Award for her role in developing a national coalition to support caregivers across Canada. Joanne Besner is an educator, professional coach, and caregiver. She received her Bachelor of Social Work and Master of Business Administration from McGill University. Her 35-year career in public community healthcare in Quebec spans many roles, including frontline case manager, clinical supervisor, manager, researcher, and trainer. So today's topic is a series of emotions, how to manage sadness, anger, and uncertainty. Lucy and Joanne will talk about the range of emotions that caregivers can experience, and they will provide tips on how to manage them. We ask that you keep your microphones turned off. We will unmute people as needed once we open the discussion. We also wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website. I will post the link in the chat after. We're going to stop recording at 11 o'clock, 30 minutes before the end of the session, so that anyone who would like to share but doesn't want to be recorded may do so. So with that, I welcome you all to today's episode, and please go ahead, ladies.
Thank you so much, Diane. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I see there's a lot of people with us today. That's exciting. Thank you for joining us. Joanne and I felt that it was important to present a session on emotions. It's a way for us to share with you what the research tells us about some of the common emotional difficulties that caregivers face when caring for a family member. We hope to provide you with information, tips, and an opportunity to have a caring conversation at the end of the presentation. So let's look at our agenda. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is what are emotions and feelings, caregiver challenges that trigger those emotions, and we're going to focus on anger, sadness, and uncertainty, and how to manage these emotions. I will present the first part. It will be more of an overview of the research and what practice actually tells us, and Joanne will do the really important piece about giving us tips about how do we manage these emotions. As a caregiver, you're likely to experience a range of emotions as you try to navigate your caregiving role. It may sometimes feel like you are on a roller coaster ride with highs and terrifying lows. At times, you want to get off that ride, and I have to say I did many times when I was caregiving. Your emotions may change quickly, they may conflict with one another, and this can leave you feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and exhausted. It's natural to want to try and avoid negative feelings, and suppressing your emotion is really common, but it's ill-advised. Whether they are positive or negatives, our emotions are key and they serve a purpose. Emotions motivate us to take action, help us to survive, avoid danger, make decisions, and understand others, and most importantly, that others understand us. When we get a feeling, it can turn into an emotion. It's a reaction to something that happens that stimulates us. This can either be positive or negative emotion and cause actual physical reaction, such as sweating, high heartbeat, and shaking. For example, If you see a bear while hiking, you will feel fear. Feelings are a result of our brain reacting to an emotion. In the case of seeing the bear, the emotion of fear may lead to a feeling of panic. As humans, we all have emotions regardless of our cultures or beliefs. Different cultures have varying norms regarding the display of emotional, especially in social settings. Each family has its own emotional culture. It's important to take into consideration, for example, if experiencing emotion is seen negatively or positively in your family, this will strongly influence how you experience emotions and feelings today. So let's take a look at burden. Caregivers are often reluctant to express negative feelings for fear of being judged by others or by themselves. Many caregivers don't want to burden others with their problems. If you don't acknowledge and deal with your feelings and emotions, they will not go away and you can suffer, and that's for sure. The consequences of physical illness, trouble coping with anxiety, substance abuse, and poor sleep. Emotions can dictate how we respond to most situations. They are always present, even if we don't acknowledge them. Our emotions often impose on us on how we live our lives. For example, if you're feeling angry, hurt, sad, or resentful, it can influence how we treat and respond to family, friends, and people in general, including the person that we are caring for. Now, research tells us that caregiving burden is reportedly highest among those providing care to a spouse or a partner. Family caregiving usually involves tasks above and beyond assisting with activities of daily living like bathing, dressing, and eating, but also medical or nursing tasks that are typically performed by nurses, but many times caregivers are expected to do that as well. While family caregiving can be a genuinely rewarding experience, and we know that, but caregivers often face challenges that leave them overwhelmed, anxious, or intimidated by their duties. So I want to look at some of the challenges that family caregivers face. All right, so let's take a look at that. Managing their time. Caregivers often find they have less time for themselves and other family members. They often spend so much time on caregiving duties that they end up sacrificing the things that they enjoy, like hobbies or going on vacation or even meeting a friend for a cup of coffee. Or they have trouble balancing work schedules around caregiving. Now, there's definitely an emotional and physical stress. Caregivers report that their health has gotten worse as a result of caregiving. Caring for chronic conditions like dementia or Alzheimer's disease seems to cause the most emotional stress. The physical demands of caregiving can also take a toll when the duties include lifting and helping with mobility. Now, there's also a lack of privacy. A family caregiver often reports feeling a lack of privacy in their own home, especially if the person they're caring for needs extra care. And you might want to hire private help or even have healthcare workers from the CLSC coming in, coming out. And so you feel that there is no privacy. You always kind of have to be on because people are coming and going. There is definitely a financial strain because most family caregivers are unpaid. They can start to feel some financial strain, especially when caregiver takes them away from their paying job, and that often happens to women in the research. The longer a family caregiver has been providing care, the more financial strain they feel. It could be things like buying equipment and even many times rearranging the home and doing all kinds of renovations to accommodate the person. Now, sleep deprivation is a big one. Lack of sleep can be an issue for caregivers. Often the loved one's sleep awake cycle can be mixed up. They're sleeping during the day, they don't sleep at night. So, sleep deprivation could take a huge toll on a caregiver who's already feeling the strain of being burdened from both ends. Now, this is another one. It's either being afraid to ask for help or not wanting to ask for help. Many caregivers feel ashamed to ask for help from others. They feel they must assume the full caregiver burden, as that asking for some assistance may be a sign of weakness, or, they're not doing a great job. The caregiver in turn starts to feel guilty that they aren't providing the best care that they could. Now, I do want to talk about depression and isolation. A family caregiver is often a high risk for depression. Oftentimes, caregiving duties take up so much of their time that they no longer maintain social connections outside of the home and find themselves very, very isolated. So now that we kind of looked at the challenges, let's look at what there is definitely a physical and an emotional impact on caregivers. So I'm going to focus a little bit more now on the mental health concerns. We know that depression and anxiety are high amongst caregivers. The whole idea of feeling sad, emptiness, crying over minor things. There's stress, feeling really, really frustrated. There are also negative effects. You feel kind of helpless. You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Being easily irritated or upset, it's something kind of just triggers in you. Feeling angry a lot of the times. Feeling abandoned. I mean, that's another one. Friends are not calling, or family members are not coming, and you kind of really, really feel alone. One of the other thing is witnessing the suffering of relatives and then their decline. I know for myself that was a big one with my mother. It's very, very difficult to handle. Anticipatory grief, worrying about the fact that the person may pass away, and that gives you a lot of anxiety. Now let's look at the physical and cognitive health concerns. So if we look at the physical, caregivers really suffer from fatigue. They're always tired, they have no energy, and sleep problems really come into play. Not sleeping well, getting up at night. The other thing that there is a weakening immune system. I don't know if you find yourself getting more colds, having headaches, there's all kinds of pains. There definitely is a risk of illness, injury, and mortality. Now, there's also functional and cognitive impairment that has been recognized as well. There's a greater need for help with your own ADLs. You're not managing for yourself all the things that you did before. You're finding yourself to be clumsy, forgetful, difficult with memory and concentration. You're kind of all over the place. There's also family challenges, okay? And so let's talk a little bit about that. Other family members might conflict with the care that you're providing. They might feel that you need to do more or do less. There could be placement issues. There's many, many things, hiring private help, so that you have, on top of everything else, you're dealing with that. And then there could be behavioral issues that are exhibited by the person you're caring for. Out of nowhere, they can start becoming more physically or verbally aggressive and sexually aggressive towards you. And that's very difficult to deal with. There's lack of cooperation from the person you're caring for. There are things that they would allow you to do before. Now they don't want you to. They don't want you to bathe them. They refuse to change their clothes. So all these things really come into play. So now that I've kind of explained and talked about all these challenges, let's focus now on the three emotions that we are going to speak to you about today. So we're going to start with anger. So what is anger? Anger is one of the basic human emotions. Anger is related to flight, fight, or freeze responses. If anger is easily provoked or frequently mobilized, it can undermine relationships or damage physical health in the long term. Prolonged release of anger hormones that accompany angers destroys neurons in areas of the brain associated with judgment and short-term memory and weaken the immune system. So what makes family caregivers angry? There are many, many reasons, and I'll just go over a few. Family caregivers' anger can look different to different people. It might be anger towards the person you're supporting when you see them making risky decisions or they're not complying, or anger towards the healthcare system because it takes a long time to get an assessment for the person you're caring for or getting any kind of help from that medical system. Anger can also stem from resentment, which is more about a feeling of unfairness or injustice. You may feel overwhelmed by the demands of your caregiving role or angry at other family members for not stepping up. Maybe you've had a complicated, tense relationship with the person you're caring for, and this is a role you never imagined for yourself. You never got along with them. There's social isolation, which many family caregivers experience as they spend more time with the person they're supporting, can also fuel anger. Other times, there's resentment can start to bubble up when you're around people who don't have to care for a parent or a spouse or a partner, or when times is taken away from your own needs, as well as the financial strain. Many caregivers don't feel comfortable admitting that they are angry. Socially and culturally, anger isn't viewed as an appropriate emotion when caring for a family member. They may feel that if they tell someone about their anger, it could be mistaken for abuse. Keep in mind that if your anger is not controlled and it does escalate, it can lead to abuse. So let's look at what is sadness. Caregivers often feel sad for many different reasons. Many times your life as you knew it has changed. Any sort of loss can result in sadness. For example, seeing the person you are caring for declining, not being able to travel as you once did, or doing the things you enjoyed with friends. Loneliness can contribute to sadness. The sadness is even deeper if a family member has passed away. What is important to keep in mind is that feeling sad doesn't always mean that you're depressed. But sadness is one of the core symptoms that can develop into clinical depression. This is why it's so important to get the help that you need so that the sadness does not escalate into clinical depression. When you are depressed, you can feel sad for no reason. Depression is generally accompanied by other symptoms like fatigue, loss of appetite, irritability, not able to deal your daily tasks. So let's take a look at depression a little closer and ask yourself, are you depressed? It's normal to have bad days, but if any of these symptoms are severe or last longer than 2 weeks, it's really time to see a doctor. So depressive feelings, you're feeling kind of empty, you're hopeless, or you feel run down. Little interest in activities you once enjoyed. You're not interested in anything. You're really irritable. And one of the big ones is also you really have trouble concentrating. And again, changes in sleep pattern are big. But so what I want to tell you that it's really important to acknowledge your feelings, but it's also important to give yourself permission to feel sorry for yourself. But it needs to be time limited. I always give myself one day, get it out of my system, and I try to move on. So let's look at what is uncertainty. This is a big one. It's a feeling of not being sure what will happen in the future. The unpredictable nature of illness and the conditions can lead to uncertainty about how the person you're caring for, how their health will evolve over time. You're not sure. Many caregivers feel a lack of control, a shortage of answers and unknowns, especially when you do not have enough information about the disease progression and what to expect. It makes perfect sense to be anxious and not certain about the future. Caregivers are also uncertain about their own future. For example, what if the person you're caring for needs long-term care? What if you get sick? What does your future look like? But research tells us that uncertainty faced by caregivers could contribute to poor mental and physical outcomes. Living with so much uncertainty is hard. Human beings crave information about the future in the same way we crave for food, for warmth, for sex, and other primary rewards. Our brain perceives ambiguity as a threat, and they try to protect us by diminishing our ability to focus on anything other than creating certainty. Recognizing these feelings and accepting that they are absolutely normal is the first step to managing them. In order to regulate your emotions and not let them take over your life, you need to acknowledge their presence and their validity. And now, after saying all that, I would like to pass it over to Joanne and to help us deal with our emotions.
Thank you, Lucy. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Lucy, for all that such informative information on emotions, their causes, what the research tells us. And now comes the hard part. What do we do with all of this? So first, I just want to start with some very basic, concrete tips to help. These can even help with prevention and helping us to be proactive. Be informed. We always say this in all our sessions. Be informed with all the information you need about the disease, but from reliable sources. By knowing more about the disease, obviously you will be better prepared for what the future may bring. At least it can minimize some of that uncertainty. However, keep in mind that for each person, the progression is very different. Stay informed about changing resources in your community from your CLSCs and other organizations. And also stay informed about what caregivers like yourself are going through and feeling, and just like you're doing by attending our webinar today. Take control of what you can and do your best not to dwell. This is challenging on what you cannot change. Establish a daily routine to give your days structure. This helps. Being present. Try to start your day on a positive note. Can you meditate, do some yoga, mindfulness, stretching? Try to avoid thinking about the what ifs. That's what we mean by being present, focusing on the now. Self-care. This is such a big topic, which we'll go into in some later sessions, but most importantly, see your doctor. Have yourself a good medical checkup. Tell your doctor how you're feeling. You may want to ask for a referral for some counseling. Meaning tend to your own health because you're very often so constantly concerned about the other person. Give yourself credit for what you are doing as a caregiver. So those are the basics, but that being said, now let's tend to these emotions and talk about self-regulation. How can we consciously manage these very complex emotions? So I'm going to offer you today a very simple formula, 4 words: recognize, pause, listen, and then act. Recognize the feelings, accept that they're normal. Pause, try not to immediately act and react on them. Listen, listen to what the emotional message is trying to tell you, and only then plan your actions. So now I'm going to take this simple model and we're going to go into it in a little bit more detail. So we're starting with recognition of our thoughts. So imagine we're starting to have a negative thought and then a bad feeling, and our emotions start to intensify and they begin to circle and spiral. We all get caught up. Sadness, anger, throw in a little uncertainty. this creates a stress pattern, conscious and unconscious. This can cause recurrent thinking patterns and spiraling. And this is an emotional recipe for disaster. You see the diagram in the middle, this spiraling thought going around and around. We all go through this. I call this going down the rabbit hole. Everything you think repeats over and over, which then reinforces and encourages more of the same kind of thinking. And Lucy mentioned research has shown that how you view and adapt yourself profoundly affects how you lead your life. So when the demand in your day is over capacity, that's what we call stress. And let's face it, caregivers' demands are often over capacity. When you're stressed, it changes your outcomes. It changes your performance. I don't know about you, but when I'm overly stressed and tapped out, I get absolutely nothing done. I can't even do it. You become overwhelmed, it tangles you up, it tangles you up in knots. So it's true, some of us can handle this better than others. There is a genetic piece to this. But if you think about it, if you're stressed and emotional, you're really good for nothing. And if you're relaxed, you're good for everything. Our thoughts come from us making meaning to what's in front of us. We control our thoughts. If we can change our thoughts, this can help us manage our emotions and self-regulate. Change is a choice. It's not easy, but it is in your control. So how do we do this? By bringing awareness to the triggers of our emotions. Know what triggers you. In order to regulate your emotions and not let them take over your life, you need to acknowledge their presence and also their validity. Let emotions run their natural course and try not to act on them. Suppressing your feelings, though, can lead to stress, anger, and unhealthy life choices. It sometimes helps to write down what are you sad, angry, uncertain, depressed about? Allow your emotions to surface, feel them, and pay attention. That's step number one. Step number two is extremely important. Pause. Avoid reacting. Pause. So we're not saying deny or suppress your feelings, but we want to help avoid blowing up with anger or sinking so low with sadness that we can't find our way back out. So we want to pause, not react. And I want to mention Viktor Frankl. Some of you may be familiar with him. He's a Holocaust survivor who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And I love this quote. I keep it on a sticky on my computer. And it says, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. If we can tap into that space, we're tapping into our power, which is awareness, and our ability to gently shift our thought response. If we can do this, we then shift the emotion and ultimately our behavioral response. Because it's not the circumstances that create emotions. It's not the circumstances that you're a caregiver, but rather your thoughts and beliefs about being a caregiver. So we need to use this discomfort in our body as an intelligent message to pay attention to. And that takes a lot of courage. When you feel discomfort, you don't want to stay with it. We want to push it away rather than sit with it, but we need to, and we need to investigate it. Even just staying right here in that emotion and allowing it is the first step. It will already help things to dissipate. So I'm going to ask you now to take it one step further. And I want to take a moment to talk about what do you do when you pause? And that is breathe. So we're going to talk about the breath. Using the breath to calm the brain. Think about it. there's a breathing pattern we have for every single emotional and mental state. If you're in fear, Lucy gave you that example of the bear story. You're panicked, you may be holding your breath. There's a soft breath when you wake up. When you relax, there's a different breath. Conscious breathing is a great stress response. And in Eastern thought, it's the heart of yoga and meditation practice. And of course, we all can't be yogis, but we can all try conscious breathing. And when you're consciously placing your attention on your breath, it brings the stress down. And this is neuroscience. So how do you do this? So you focus all your attention inside. And I'm going to invite you to do this with me for a moment here. So everybody, focus your attention right now on your breath. Just notice the fact that you're breathing. Take a breath in, take a breath out. Just notice when you breathe in, your chest comes up with your inhalation. And just notice when you breathe out, the chest relaxes with your exhalation. Notice how soft the breath is as it comes in. This is where you want to go. So you're just focusing on your breath, just noticing it. And notice as well, when you breathe in, there's a slight pause at the top of the inhalation. And then when you breathe out, there's a slight pause at the bottom of the inhalation as we breathe out. The other thing that's so important about breathing is that emotions are contagious. So what we want to show you is that when you start to do your own breathing and slow it down, other people around you start to slow down as well. And this is so important as caregivers because we know we don't want to escalate the emotions or the stress of the person we're caring for, and especially if they're having challenging behaviors that come with a disrupted environment. If we are calmer, then the energy that we are putting out to them is calmer too. And I want to share an example of my first experience with this. And it happened 20 years ago. I was having a sinus surgery and I had to be awake. And it was very early, it started. And I got very panicky and scared. And I remember my heart rate started to escalate and race. And I saw on the screen, and the doctor turned to me and he looked straight in my eyes and he said, "Joanne, breathe. You can control your heart rate and you can bring it back down." And I did. So now we're going into step 3. We've noticed our emotions. We're now calm. Now we can calmly listen to what our emotions are telling us. What message are they telling us? Ask yourself, is this thought true? Is it serving me well to think about this? How would I feel if I didn't believe this thought? And sometimes it helps to journal and write things down. When does it happen? Where is it happening? Where is my stress going up? Monitor where stress is, and actually you can find stress reflection worksheets easily on the internet. So when we identify or bring into our awareness what the challenge is, what's sparking our emotions, we can now start to think calmly, what are potential solutions? And it's here that lies the power that you have to influence your reality. When we get into this calm breathing stage, it's like an incubation stage for our insights. So listen to that emotional message and then decide, what's the best way to incorporate this into my actions? This is called self-regulation. It is not denying or shoving your feelings under a carpet. It's allowing them to be heard. Once you notice them, you have a choice. You can go to your go-to habits. We all have those patterns and habits that we automatically go to. We can express them, or we can decide to make a change. And this is where step 4 comes in, and this is where we can act. We're calm, but we need to start with acceptance. It's important to acknowledge your present situation and your life as it is today, rather than fixating on how it was in the past. You thought you were heading to Paris, France, and instead you landed in Lisbon, Portugal. Replace the expectations with plans and prepare for different possibilities. Give yourself permission to feel sorry for yourself, as Lucy always says. This is her line, but it needs to be time limited. Our habitual default behaviors can sometimes be extremely self-destructive. Now, you might have to sit with some discomfort in the body. And, we know that's not something we always really want to do, but it gives us energy for insight. And then once we're in this stage, this is where we really can reflect on the truths, the facts, and make decisions and take action, but when we're in a more calm, cool-headed place. What exactly is bothering me? What is my dissatisfaction telling me about what I need? What could make the situation better? So I'm just going to add a note about complaining. Isn't it true that complaining is the ultimate joy killer? Nobody wants to be around a chronic complainer. And constant venting and aimless whining tends to bring everybody down. But I want you to think about something. Is complaining to be avoided at all costs? So, and this is big for me, I'm going to say there's no shame in complaining. And the truth is, I don't like complainers. It's something that triggers me. But why am I telling you this? And that the truth is that complaining is often unfairly stigmatized. Despite its negative connotations, complaining isn't necessarily toxic in every single situation. It's a natural part of being human. Let's be honest, we are wired to focus on what's not going well way more than we're focused on what's going well. So the idea of never complaining, it seems kind of unrealistic and maybe unhealthy. After all, we all have our opinions. But believe it or not, the research suggests that certain forms of complaining can actually bring people closer together, spark positive change. We know today there are strong messages about gratitude. Lucy and I talk all the time about being grateful, keeping a gratitude journal, but it's okay to be both grateful and to voice complaints every now and then. Knowing when to complain is a valuable skill. And sometimes even the way we complain can inject a little more warmth and humor into our world, making it feel a little less lonely. So I want to highlight just 4 things that can kind of help us when we complain. So complaining is actually a voice for our needs. It can help us figure out what we need, and it's a signal to others to pay attention. Complaining to gain perspective. When we openly share what's bothering us, it can be like we're stepping back from the problem and looking at it from a different angle or a bigger perspective and more objectively. So this can sometimes give us a clearer view of what's really going on and help us think about solutions. Sometimes just talking about a distressing event can make it seem less serious than we thought. And we might realize it's not as big a deal as we first thought, and we might even see a way to fix it that we hadn't considered before. Okay, how about this one? Complaining as a mood enhancer when it's done right. Does complaining ever make you feel better and take the weight off your shoulders? Because research suggests that complaining can actually make us feel better, but generally only when we receive affirmation for the feelings. If somebody says after you've complained, that must be hard, that can really help lift our mood. So the last one, complaining as a pathway to social connection. Complaining has a surprising ability to bring people together, especially when they're sharing similar feelings. In moments of collective distress, complaining becomes a shared experience where we find companionship and even humor in our grievances. And this is why caregiver support groups can sometimes be so helpful. People can bond over common frustrations and challenges. and really feel like we're in this together. But we need to proceed with caution if you're using complaining. If complaining really is your constant go-to, you need to try different ways to cope. Especially if nobody's listening to you or really cares or affirms, it can make us feel worse. So the message from us is not that we're, to rely solely on complaining, because that can lead to burnout and really strain your relationships and friendships. So save your complaining for things that can be changed. Prioritize addressing issues that have potential for resolution, more than, things that, instead of things that are just beyond your control. And of course, choose your audience wisely and avoid overloading others. You don't want others to start feeling overwhelmed or irritated by your complaints, because that could isolate you. But in a world filled with so many messages today preaching endless gratitude, it's okay to be grateful and to voice your complaints every now and then. So to summarize that 4-point strategy to manage your emotions, again, we are not denying them or sweeping under the rug. 1, recognize, allow, notice your emotions, but then pause. Don't react immediately. Breathe, go through some of the breathing techniques I've shared with you today, and then listen. Listen to the message that your emotion is trying to tell you. Only then be prepared to act, make decisions there, think of your options and solutions. Of course, our last point is always, you don't have to do this alone. Ask for help. There are support services in your communities, support groups, and individual counseling. So now Lucy and I are prepared to have a caring conversation with you. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to stop the PowerPoint, come back to everybody. So now we are here for you. If anybody has any questions, comments, needs any elaboration, and I'm going to go to Diane because maybe there are some things in the chat to get us started.
Thank you. Indeed, there is a comment from Jennifer who says, I think there is an element of embarrassment for the caregiver because other people do not understand dementia and how it can impact people living with dementia's behaviors. They may be making excuses or trying to hide the fact that their loved one can be inappropriate.
Okay. Lucy, do you want to take that one?
No, I mean, that's a very good point that you're making. Many caregivers feel embarrassed by some of the behaviors that the person they're caring for is displaying. And it's part of acceptance. First and foremost, you need to accept that that person is no longer the person that they were. And some of the things that really work is with people, friends, or family members that you really trust. It's important to share rather than hide it. And so it'll even be easier for them to understand if someone behaves inappropriately or makes a comment or tries to grab them for whatever reason. So they also know. And, I'll go as far as even saying, many times caregivers say, well, how am I going to handle the situation if we're going somewhere else? So if you're even flying, telling attendants the attendants that are on the flight, sensitizing them to the fact that the person you're caring for needs a little bit more support. So acceptance, being honest, and being able to sort of deal with that as it goes.
Thank you, Lucy. I'm just going to add one more thing to your wonderful response, and that's the word education. The other thing that can help, especially with those that are close to you, they may not know as much as you do, or they may not know anything about the disease. So how we always say, be informed and stay informed. For those close to you, you can help by giving them a little bit of information or asking them if they would like ask permission. Would they like a little bit of information? You can give them an article or a pamphlet as well, or even invite them to join a webinar like this to get a better idea of what you're going through.
Thank you. Jennifer also commented that resiliency and self-care are essential.
Agreed. Thank you, Jennifer. Well said.
Totally agree with that. We always try to promote that.
So I have a couple more questions. I'm also, if anyone would prefer to answer the question or raise the question in person, you are also welcome to raise your hand, or you can wait until we stop recording at 11 if you prefer to have more privacy and not have your question recorded. So I have two more questions here. What advice would you have for those who are working in caregiving in terms of suggesting flexibility at work to support in managing the employee going through it and avoiding burnout?
Can you repeat that, Diane? It's because I don't see it visually. And
managing the employee. Yeah, so it sounds like they're asking on behalf of their employees. So what advice would you have for those who are working in caregiving in terms of suggesting flexibility at work to support in managing the employee going through it and avoiding burnout? So it sounds like it's an employer who wants to know how can they support their employee who's a caregiver.
You know what? I'm so happy actually that this topic is raised, because actually when Lucy and I were working together in the CS, we thought a lot about our employee caregivers, to the point where we actually sent out surveys to see what their needs were. It's such an important thing to raise. If you want to retain your employees, show them support, recognize they're a caregiver. First, I would always say, ask them what they need, because needs of people can vary. And secondly, once you find out that, a flexible work schedule, allowing them to take the person they're caring to for appointments, is extremely important. Sometimes if they've arranged help and the help all of a sudden cancels at the last minute, that can be so stressful. Showing understanding and flexibility, allowing them possibly to work at home in a hybrid way if that's possible. But I think even bringing it up to a caregiver employee that you're concerned and you want to support them, that goes such a far way. So of course you have to balance your needs of the person at work. But those are a few of my ideas. And Lucy, do you want to add something to that?
I think that all you're saying is really, we did do a survey to get just acknowledging that, by doing a survey, acknowledging that we recognize that employers can be caregivers as well. And the whole idea behind it, they shouldn't be afraid to come to you and let you know that they are a caregiver and that you are there to listen and work together with them to fulfill their obligations at work and their obligations as a caregiver.
Thank you, ladies. So I'll raise another question. Here we go. As people with dementia change, should we try to take them back to how they were, or just accept where they are and let it slide?
Yeah. Do you want to start, Lucy?
It's fine. I mean, look, we talk about acceptance. I have to talk on a personal level. This was a big one for me. I had to really accept my mother for who she was at that time. It was very, very hard. But once I accepted it, it benefited me and it benefited her as well, because my expectations weren't the same any longer. The joys that we could share together were maybe smaller, but extremely meaningful. So once I accepted that these were her limitations, it was easier for me to move on. And I know that our relationship even changed, because, as I said, my expectations or my anger or frustration, like, what's going on? Why is she doing this? Or why is she behaving like this? Diminished. We created a new relationship that was extremely meaningful for both of us.
Thanks for sharing that personal piece, Lucy. I think this question is so relevant today about emotions, because if you haven't reached that point of acceptance and you're just constantly frustrated because you miss that person that they were, and they're not there anymore, that can be a big trigger for anger, frustration, sadness, everything we talked about today, and uncertainty about where is this going. So I guess that it's just another reason why somehow coming to acceptance can help with managing your emotions. And I think that's really hard today, because so many diseases, there's so much research and so much hope today. And, we think when we have a new diagnosis, oh, there must be something out there that can prevent, stop, work on this. And unfortunately, in the field of dementia and Alzheimer's, new drugs and treatments, they've been really slow coming in. We hope and trust and know one day, yes, there will be treatments. But today, because there are some helpful medications, it is a very special disease where we lose our person gradually. And what I want to end on this question is that words that we said today: be present, be where that person is now. It's going to help them. It won't frustrate them as much, and it will help you be less frustrated as well.
Thank you for that. I have a few comments. So the first from Joanne. Thanks, Joanne, from another Joanne. I know that you were speaking to everyone, but I can certainly relate to the points you shared about complaining. I will try to be more aware of this. We don't realize how it affects our relationships. So thank you for sharing that comment.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you.
And I have from Jennifer, who asked the first question. She mentions that she's a caregiver for her spouse who is early on in the dementia journey, and she also works in the field of dementia education and supporting teams that work with people with dementia and brain injury. It's difficult as I live with what I work.
Ooh.
It's important. Yeah, it's important to take the time for self-care. It's also helped me to have a further understanding and empathy around slowing things down and simplifying tasks so that he and I can enjoy the little things on his terms.
Well said. Thank you for that.
Thanks for sharing that. So now we have another question. What did you mean when you said that every person with dementia has a different progression? Can you please elaborate with examples?
Yes. So, we educate ourselves, and there are stages of dementia, but everybody's trajectory can look different. You can, and most importantly, it depends the type of dementia you have and where it is. There's dementia, Alzheimer's type disease, there's Parkinson's type, there's frontal lobe, temporal dementia. So of course, actually, and this is where I want to refer Diane to all the webinars on the site, not Caring Conversations, but
McGill Cares. I'll put the links in the chat for that.
Because the word dementia is an umbrella. And even those with Alzheimer's disease or each ones, there are very many different symptoms. People come with their personalities, depending on also where they and who they are being cared for. So we do inform ourselves. We know there is a trajectory, but the pace of it, what symptoms are more prevalent, is just like anything. It's just different amongst different people. So I hope, does that answer the question? And if you want more elaboration, and we really encourage you to, and Diane just put it in, yes, about the guide. The guide's fantastic. Do I have a copy here? It's in the other room. The webinars are excellent and will help answer that question more profoundly.
Super. Thank you. So I have another question. First of all, thank you, Lucy, Joanne, and Diane, for this session. I think it's also a mix of frustration, anger, and embarrassment when a family member is unintentionally extra difficult. presenting severe inappropriate behaviors in storytelling. Finding support and finding the right support for both trust and understanding can be difficult. Can you advise if there are techniques that can help with this?
Yes, there are techniques, and we have a whole session on dealing with difficult behaviors. So for this, I would ask you to go back and check in our session, watch the session, because we have a lot of tips in there. And you know what? They can be similar. I'm just going to say this to this 4-step process that I shared with you today. A lot of it is pausing, is not reacting. So those are really good tips to share. But often what we want to do is redirect people, distract people when they have these behaviors. But it's such a big question that we did a whole hour on this. So I would encourage you to watch that episode, and there are some others in on the website as well from McGill Cares. Lucy, did you want to add anything to that, or?
I mean, as you said, there's a whole hour and of how to deal with that. The tips are very simple. It's something that you could practice and you kind of feel a little bit in control. The most
I
important,
do. Yeah, sorry, it's, the question is making me think of a personal experience I had a few months ago where I walked in the restaurant and I was with my partner, and another couple walked in, and that I had known, but I hadn't seen in many years. And as soon as the gentleman started talking and he was with his wife, because I'm educated and informed, I knew right away this person is having dementia. And I could see their wife started to feel uncomfortable, and she did pull me away, and she whispered to me, "My husband has Alzheimer's." And I just comforted her. I said, thank you for telling me. So I think a simple act like that, when it's really important. Tell a person. We can't change the behavior. Sometimes it is embarrassing. The other thing is we need to think carefully about where we go. Is it a comfortable place for the person we're caring from? What's their history of reactions? So we want to make sure we go to places where a person feels comfortable so that we can minimize those reactions. But they're going to happen, and there's always a first time. And, all I can say is it's okay. Breathe. You're going to get through it. And unfortunately, it's part of the progression. But watch our episode, because there's a lot of helpful tips on exactly what to do.
Thank you. And I have posted links in the chat, so please do go in and take a look at those links. So I don't know, normally we would stop recording soon, and then we would take this conversation offline. We'll continue to answer questions. So maybe I'll just say a few words just to close the webinar, and then we'll continue this webinar without the recording. So first of all, thank you so much, Lucy and Joanne, and for everyone who participated from home today. It will be recorded and posted on our website in a few days in the Caring Conversations section of our website. So I've posted the link in the chat. Our next Caring Conversation episode will focus on guilt and self-care, when Joanne and Lucy will dive into the emotion of guilt and the importance of prioritizing self-care. It will take place on Tuesday, March 19th at 10 a.m. And as usual, we'll be sending out a newsletter. So please be sure to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already. I will also be sending out an email with an evaluation link. So we would really appreciate your feedback on the session today. And once again, thank you so much to the Petro-Canada Caremakers Foundation for making this webinar possible. This is a project of the McGill Dementia Education Program, which is funded entirely by private donations. So please visit our website if you'd like to make a donation. We're always very grateful for that. We hope that you found today's conversation useful, and we wish you a very wonderful end of the month. And let's hope that it warms up soon for spring.